Oh, thank you.
Hey everyone! Before we get this episode started, also, I wanted to sound like a YouTuber, that's why I started off with, hey everyone, like, subscribe below. You know how YouTubers are. Okay, but before we get started, I want y'all to know we are going extra big with the All-Star season of Vulnerability Time podcast. So, guess what? We got video podcast. So, click in the episode description below if you wish to watch the video of the podcast as well. It'll be a YouTube link, so you can go ahead and get it going and get watching it. Make sure to follow, like, subscribe below. Such a YouTuber, right? Anyways, folks, enjoy the episode. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Vulnerability Time. It's the All-Star season. All-Stars. Okay. So, a fan favorite is back, an All-Star, Callie. Hey,
Hi.
So, she's back because, y'all loved her episode. I loved her episode. We love a good All-Star. We love a good All-Star, Callie.
Thank you.
Yes. Okay, so we're just gonna jump right in it. So this is a discussion point that no one has picked yet. You're the first one to pick it, and I've been waiting for someone to pick it. So
wait, which one? I picked two.
Yeah, you picked two. We're gonna start off with the testimony one first, because I really want to hear that, and then if we have enough time, we'll do the other one. But obviously this is going to be conversational, so it might jump from A to Z to the letter 3. You know how it is. Same like last time.
Okay.
But I definitely want to touch on your testimony. So if you see me look off to the side, it's because I'm keeping track of time and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so let me just totally blend.
Also, when I think of testimony, I think of my Jesus testimony.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, your high power testimony.
Okay.
Our high power testimony. Yeah. Oh, it's vulnerability time. Anything's okay. Okay. Testimony time. So, what drew you to that specifically? What was the motivation? I want to ask that before we get into it. I'm just curious.
I feel like my testimony is always something that I'm passionate and I feel called to share. I also feel like the more people share about their testimonies, the less power you give to any shame or guilt that might come with it. Mm-hmm. It helps people open up to talking about what they struggle with, and I just feel like if more people shared their testimonies, it's a super powerful thing.
Very, very. Yeah. Yes. Okay. I'm definitely feeling that. I definitely am agreeing with that 1000%. That's something that, I'm needing to work on a little bit more. I used to love to share my testimony, and now I'm just not ashamed of it, but I know this sounds, I hope this doesn't sound super arrogant, but this is literally my reality. Mm-hmm. This has been something I've encountered. When I share my testimony, people are really? Because I'm gay, mm-hmm. And so when they find out, oh, I actually died before and I got to meet Jesus physically, mm-hmm. Some people are when I say some people, I mean Christians.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm just wow, thanks. And so it kind of got me down a little bit, mm-hmm. and made me think that it's not a powerful testimony, and that
no, it's powerful.
It. Yeah, and I know it is.
Not either.
But my feelings and my mm-hmm. thought, it made me feel
invalidated.
Yeah, there we go.
Mm-hmm. You were crazy.
Yes. Not that I was crazy, but that it either wasn't true, invalidated. or and that like I'm not worthy of that encounter.
I feel like it's your story and people can't like say it didn't happen because they were never fully there.
Yeah.
I know that like I can see how people would like feel because like I grew up in a really traditional Christian like family or and like church where like we didn't really talk much about like miracles or like crazy signs or things like that. And so like you just kind of grow up super skeptical because you're like, this never really happens, or if it does, you think it like happens in like those countries, you know, where like they don't have like Christians there, and you know, and so like to come across that, I think there is a level of like fear to believing it. But at the end of the day, like it's really just between you and God, and if that's what brought you to believe and like you're here now, then that's what it is, and it'll touch who it's meant to touch. But if you don't share it at all, then it's just not going to touch anybody.
Right. It will land on the right ears.
Yes.
But we miss 100% of the shots we don't take. I forgot who said that, but somebody said that, and so it's kind of like,
definitely.
You know, you never know who's going to need to hear it. So with that being said, Callie, I don't even know what to say, what to ask, because I just want to sit and let you
kind of go.
Testimony time. And if we get time for the other ones, just for the folks that are listening, the other one discussion point was not where I want to be, but exactly where I need to be. Like in life. That's the other one Callie picked. Callie came with the wisdom. Okay, so testimony time.
Okay.
So, from the start.
Yes. So grew up in a Christian family. If I like say like when
it froze up a little bit.
It'd be like 5th grade. Huh?
Wait, sorry, it froze up a little bit.
Oh, okay. So grew up in a Christian family. 5th grade comes, children minister was like, raise your hand, close your eyes, raise your hand if you believe you're gonna go to heaven. In that moment, I wasn't sure. And then my mom saw it. She had a talk with me. I honestly don't remember what she said, but I remember like out of fear of not going to hell, which I feel like is like how most kids do it these days, or like not these days, but when you're young, like you're very simple-minded. You don't think in complex ways. And so it's very much like, oh, I don't want to go to hell. I fear it. So then I'm just going to believe in God so I can go to heaven.
Right.
And then,
fear-based. Yeah.
So pray, give my life to Jesus, got baptized. It's one of those things where I'm like, yes, I was a child and I don't remember too much. But looking back at my life, I do genuinely believe that was when God came into my life, because I've only seen growth and change from there, which is only from the Holy Spirit. So gave my life 5th grade, middle school hit. I think that's the season when I think everyone who grows up in church goes through a period where they doubt and they wonder, like, do I just believe in God because I was raised in it? Is God even real? What about other religions? And you kind of develop your own reasoning for believing what you believe and not just kind of blindly tagging along because that's what everyone else is doing. So that was kind of the season when I developed my own faith and grew into that. Then high school and beginning of college is when I believe, and this is where the majority of my testimony kind of comes, is where I believe that like when the gospel became personal to me. It was always kind of like, you believed logically that it happened, and you're like, yeah, Jesus like died on the cross for you, rose up from the grave, blah, blah. But it was never really personal in my life until maybe high school. So, and this is a topic, one reason why I'm passionate about talking about it was because growing up in church where like purity was a huge thing, and then porn and masturbation, things like that was always geared towards men. Like if you think about like pastors addressing like, oh, you should stop watching porn.
Right, it's more
it's always like, guys don't do that. And so I was a young girl who like struggled with that.
Right.
Honestly, like it started before I even knew like what was happening, what I was doing, and like
Right.
before I could fully even understand it. And then in middle school, high school was when like my mom's version of the purity talk to me, or like the puberty talk, sorry, was going through a book together. And so we went through a book, and it wasn't until then that I realized like what I was doing, and then like all like guilt and shame immediately hit, and I was like, I feel like a weird girl, because in my head and what I've been told is that only guys struggle with this, and so I felt like something was wrong with me to like deal and struggle with this, and so then I held it in. And I was like heavily involved in church because I grew up in it, and I was like leading worship, leading youth, but this was like my deep dark secret, and I felt like if anybody like knew that I like did this, then they would immediately like abandon me, or like they would
that
like
rejection.
Reject me, think that I was like weird for like being a girl who like did this or whatnot. And then meanwhile, like I kept it in, was battling it by myself, and I think with any addiction, like I call that addiction, people, I think everyone kind of goes through their own addictions, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
And with any addiction, it's kind of like a defeating cycle where you do something and you're like, God, I'm so sorry, I won't do it again. And then you fail, and then you repeat it. And then it happens so many times where you get to a point where you're like, I don't even feel genuine, like talking to God anymore about it. God's probably honestly tired of hearing my like 1000th apology that you at this point like don't even expect to like carry through.
Right.
And so people either, I think when it comes to addiction, they either kind of like numb.
Yeah.
You know, they either numb, or they like do the opposite, where you're fearful of becoming numb to it. So then you like put on tons and tons of guilt onto yourself so that you don't ever grow numb. And so I was the latter. So I put tons and tons of guilt on me, and I just like felt like dirty, everything. And then first year of college, I think, was the turning point for me. And when that gospel was personalized for me, because I remember I was just sitting with one of my friends, and she had just shared like her own addictions and her struggle and her freedom. And she was like, Callie, a lot of times when we measure victory over addiction, we measure it through time. We're like, oh, if I abstain for 3 months, then I'm victorious. Or if I don't do it for 2 years, then I'm victorious. Like it's very time-based. But she was like, no, because like Jesus died on the cross, and he has already fought this battle and won this battle for you, and his victory is put on you. Like you are victorious now. Not in 3 months, not in 2 years. Like you are victorious now in this moment and today because of what Jesus did. And because
that is the advertisement soundbite right there. I just want to let you know that.
Yeah. And she was like, you're not defined by like your struggles. Like you don't see yourself by your struggles. Like you are a child of God. And that's who you are. That's your identity. A lot of guilt and shame come with addictions because that is the way we view ourselves. That is the identity we put on ourselves. But that's not our identity. And we are a child of God who is victorious right now in this moment. That doesn't mean that like I just like stopped trying, but it was more so like I can address my addictions from a standpoint of victory rather than defeat. And there's just like a level of like freedom that you feel, and you really start to feel that like that grace and that mercy that like God has given us. And so that's kind of
I felt that.
Yeah.
I just had to give him glory. I felt that. I needed to hear that. I'm not even joking. I needed to hear that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So I think that's when the gospel became personal into my life. I think a lot of times, like I was growing up in church, like I was such I was that church girl who was like a rule follower. So like because of guilt, I just like never did anything. Like I couldn't lie to my parents. I like try to follow the rules as best as I could go. And so then when you grow up hearing the gospel of like, oh, you're sinful and like God did this for your sins and he died and he like rose and you're like free, blah, blah, blah. Like it's sometimes because you don't have much of a pre-Jesus, it's hard to remember like what God saved you from or things like that. But it's even just like the day-to-day things that like, whether it's like lying, envy, greed, pride, like those are all like very addictive, repetitive sins that like we all try to be better people. We all fail at whatever goal we're working on. But knowing that despite the failure, it doesn't mean that we aren't convicted by it and that we like, especially if we hurt other people, like we should feel convicted, we should apologize, we should do better and try better, but not having that guilt and shame aspect added to it, where you're like, no, I've already conquered this sin. Like I am victorious and I'm not defeated.
Wow.
Even if I mess up one time. So that's kind of, and I've always been like really passionate about like sharing this testimony just because I know like the more I shared about it, the less you tie yourself to that identity, right? Before, because you're carrying so much guilt and shame, you're like, this is who I am. This is who I am. Like, I don't want anyone to know. But the more you talk about it and the more you talk about it, your testimony from a standpoint of victory, the less you let that be your identity. Because now you're verbally affirming every single time through telling other people that like, I am more than this.
Right.
And so I'm very passionate about telling other people, but also like the more that I've shared, the more that especially girls have come forward with their struggles with like porn and whatnot, which like in a Christian circle is just so like I think it's gotten better now, but before it was very like taboo and like no one like talked about it. Always just like the guys who like struggled or whatnot, but like it just opens up a space for vulnerability, which is like essentially what your podcast is talking about. Like it's a space for girls to like kind of come forward with like what they struggle with and that we can like go through it together rather than like hiding it and feeling guilt and shame, because guilt and shame kind of come from hiding it.
Wow. Yes. And you know, that's the funny thing, because according to the analytics, over 60% of the viewers, and it's a lot of viewers of the podcast, are women. Or folks that identify as, you know, women. But that my analytics has they set it as like a different category. They say like non-binary. I don't know how to change that. But yeah, wow. So I mean, I know for a fact that there's someone listening right now or listening next year that's gonna need to hear that. You know, and they might not need to hear it now, but they're still gonna listen to it, and it might, you know, come up, you know, relevant in their life 2 years from now, and they're gonna remember Callie, you know, what Callie said, I'm not alone, things like that. You know, that is amazing. Oh my gosh. Thanks. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Go ahead, keep sharing.
Oh, no, you're good. I mean, I think the main point that I want to go spread across is whatever addiction. Because I know that like culture that these days, especially when it's not tied to Christianity, like porn, masturbation for girls is like recommended and promoted as like sexual empowerment or whatnot. That's just not, it doesn't necessarily go with my personal values, but regardless of what you believe, I'm sure there is something that goes against your value, whatever your own value is, that goes against your value that you have tried to like stop doing, but you like struggle to stop. So whatever like addiction in your life that is, like it presents in different ways in different people's lives. but that's my target, is like, what, it doesn't have to be like the one that I talked about that I like had guilt and shame over, but like whatever addiction that you have, like this is like what it means to believe in Jesus and like let the gift that he has given us, the victory that he has won for us, be put in you. You know, like it's kind of like he's offering this victory, like take it and approach whatever you're struggling with from a standpoint of victory and freedom, rather than like trying to fix it by yourself and then feeling defeated every time you fail.
Right. Wow. Okay, well, Pastor Callie, no, serious. I'm just all into it. I'm like, wow. I'm just all into it. I done forgot where I was for a second. Just
soak it in.
Yeah, right, yes. Wow. Oh my gosh. There's something I'm gonna tell you, but after this. After this. Because it's about a little bit about what we talked like about before we started recording. But wow, oh my gosh, thank you. Oh my gosh, yay, what? So good to end. It's kind of like hot in here. I don't know, like I feel all inspired and just, oh my gosh. Okay, soak this in. So you know what I'm gonna do immediately after this? I'm gonna re-listen to this about 2-3 times while I do my homework. Finish my assignments for one of my 3 of my classes. I gotta finish some assignments, but I'm gonna be listening to this intentionally, and then the second time I'm gonna be listening to it in the background while I do my assignment, because I need to soak this in more and more. The fact that you said exactly what I needed to hear, and there are some of the things I didn't even know I needed to hear until you said it.
Yeah.
So,
always hear it.
Pastor Callie, pretty much, I want you to touch on that. We have some time left to touch on that. Of not, and I know this is, okay, so not where I want to be, but exactly where I need to be. I know for me, sometimes I believe it or sometimes I don't when it comes to me. I'm not where I want to be in life, but I'm exactly where I need to be. Sometimes I believe it in the moment, and sometimes it's like one of those things where I look back and I'm like, I needed to be there. But I want to know what this is to you. Not where I want to be, but exactly where I need to be.
Yeah, so I last year, so I'm currently in LA right now.
LA! Woo!
Hey! Anyways, but I moved here last week. But before that, I spent a year in San Clemente, which is like a small little beach town.
Wait, how are you? Was the tropical storm as bad as they put it on?
Oh no, it was just like any other rain.
Exactly. The news is so freaking
it was fine.
annoying. Yeah.
But yeah, so August 2023 last year, I moved from Texas, where I was born and raised, to San Clemente, a small beach town. And I stayed there for a year, and then I moved to LA last week. But my season in San Clemente, I would say, is probably my loneliest year in my life. I remember the moment I landed in San Clemente, I was like, I don't belong here. Like, I just immediately knew, like, this was not my place.
Right.
And originally I picked San Clemente because of like a job offer there. And I had wanted to move to California because I liked nature and the weather. And so I'd never heard of San Clemente, found it on a map, and I was like, this is probably not bad. And then I landed, and it's such a like small town, like where everyone knows each other. It's a surf town, so everyone surfs. There's nothing like wrong about that culture, but it's just a culture that it didn't felt like me, and it felt very hard for me to belong there. everyone was nice there. I made friends, but I just didn't feel like I could connect on a deeper level just because we were like very different.
Yeah.
And I remember, and I'm an extrovert, so being alone for an extended period of time is very hard for me. But I feel like I was putting myself out there. I was going to different churches. I was going to different like social events. I was showing up to a lot of things and having a little small talk with strangers and whatnot. And I made these like friends that like I would say hi to at church, but no one that I felt deep and comfortable enough to call if I like needed to cry or something.
Yeah.
And there were so many weekends that came where I had no plans and I was like scrambling to find something to do. Holidays were very, very hard because Orange County, where I'm at, it's a very family friendly place. And so a majority of people there have family like within 30 minutes. And so when it came to holidays, like they had their family to spend time with, and there weren't really any transplants in that area. And so like holidays was always like, I dreaded the holidays because I was like, I know I'm going to be by myself for the weekend. It's going to be a lonely time.
Right.
So it was very, very lonely season mixed in with the breakup that we talked about last episode. It just like wasn't a good combo. And I remember telling myself in the first half of the year, I was like, God has a plan. Like I'm here for a reason. Like it'll show, you know? And I think I always thought of myself as like being in a place for like others. Like I always want to like make a difference with where I'm at, right? And so I felt like I wasn't really making a difference because I didn't know anyone to like I feel like really make a difference. But I kept telling myself like it'll come, and it didn't come. And then a year later, like just multiple things happened and the living situation fell through. And that's when the idea came to move to LA. It's kind of like I was just exacerbated at that point where I was like, are these all just signs for me to go? Like, should I stay? Should I go? Why has living here felt so hard for me? But at the same time, I felt like if I left San Clemente, it would feel like I was a failure in a way. Like, I was like, well, if I leave a year in and without really feeling like I made a difference for anything or anyone, would that mean that I had picked the wrong place and kind of gone like a little detour to where I'm meant to be? And it was a hard struggle because I chose wrong, you know?
I feel that.
And whenever I would tell people like what were especially since I was like leaving San Clemente at that point, that's when you start reflecting on your time there, right? Like what came out of it, what was accomplished. And what came out of this season of like loneliness for me was this development and friendship of a one-on-one friendship between me and Jesus. Prior to my season in San Clemente, spending time with Jesus felt like that like 10 to 15 like minute quiet time that you check off that you did every day. And like praying, I either would zone out, I would start thinking about other things. It just always felt so hard to like do it and stay focused, for it to feel restful. And then like I couldn't ever fathom like spending more than 10 or 15 minutes with Jesus at a time. But this past year was the first time that I ever spent like an hour with him and it felt like it wasn't enough. Because I started getting into this like journaling habit, and then I would journal prayers, and then I would listen to him, and it became this entire like conversation with Jesus. During that time alone, I developed like an awareness of his presence with me. Like it's so cheesy to say like, or cliche to say that like you're never really alone because God is with you. Like when you actually like feel and are aware of his constant presence, like I really did start feeling less lonely or less alone. Like
Yeah.
I would on weekends, towards the end, like on weekends where I had no plans, like my discipler encouraged me to get in the car and be like, all right, Jesus, like, what are we going to do today? What adventure are we going to go on today? And it became like me and him running errands together, like checking out random things together, going to the beach and conversating about my life, or like me crying to him, me grieving with him, even me wrestling with him because I was mad at him. Like, I just felt this like actual relationship developed.
Yeah.
And that is something that I've never really had before. Like to need to spend an hour or two like alone with him and like feeling disconnected when I haven't had that in a while. Like that has never happened until this year when I was alone. And one of my friends told me like maybe it wasn't necessarily that San Clemente was the wrong choice or the wrong place. Maybe it's not even the place. It's just that this is the season you were meant to go through. And regardless,
I was thinking that too.
You would have picked, you would have gone through a season of loneliness, because out of that, like, developed this, like what me and my discipler would call it, like this garden that you like grew and bloomed with him, that now that you are leaving San Clemente, like you are much more equipped. LA is like such a city of chaos and distractions. And now you've developed kind of like this core relationship and like quiet stillness that you need to sustain yourself in a chaotic city. And so I guess it's less of like a place, but more of like a season of like, I didn't want this season. I didn't want to be lonely. I didn't want to be sad, especially during a breakup.
Right. Yeah.
This was the season that I like needed for my own growth and my own like soul to like rest, be still, and build a friendship with God that I never really had before. He was always kind of like my Lord, you know?
Right.
That kind of relationship. But yeah.
Yeah, you got to develop, on a different level of intimacy with him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I like how you express it. It definitely didn't feel good in the moment, of course. Like, I hate that. I was like, I wish growth could also feel great. Like, I wish growth could feel great, Because, we are human beings. We are spiritual beings, encountering and going through a human experience. So it's like, we definitely have, and I know all emotions are neutral, at the end of the day, but, it still doesn't feel good. And that can really get to us, There was something that you had mentioned. I forgot what I was going to say.
Okay.
I do that a lot. I forgot what I was going to say. Good Lord. It was literally like right there. Right there. Oh my gosh. I cannot believe this. I mean, this happens all the time on the episodes. I always forget what I'm going to say. I mean, I was just going to ask a question, but I cannot think of it.
It'll come to you later.
It'll come to me later. It'll probably come to me after the episode. Gosh. The point is, and I'm thinking me saying the point is going to help me remember. Well, I will say this. I definitely needed to hear that. I'm not going through that now necessarily, but I was going through that. I was going through, similar, when I was at Portland State University 2 years ago, and I just immediately, as soon as I got to the airport, I was like, I know this place isn't for me. It's not for me. And I didn't see what the heck the point of it was until the last 3 weeks. And me being a human, I'm like, I remember what I was going to say, by the way, so I'll say that after. Me being a human, I'm just like, God, did it really take all of that? Did it really take all of that? Did it really take all of that? I was like, for those in 3 weeks? Did it really take all those months? You know, I'm not him, but as a human, I'm like that. It didn't need to take all that, but I'm not him. I don't know how I would have responded to those last 3 weeks. You know, I would say I experienced a grace that I've never experienced before from certain individuals. And that's really interesting for me to experience, like, actual, like, grace, not just the word, but the actual, like, actions, you know, like, of grace. I was like, wow. And Portland State, just Portland in general, was a great. There was a lot of hatred and anger and frustration that I had towards God, you know, that I had for like a couple years prior, you know, and I would say 3 years prior, and I was, of course, I was purging it out by being honest with God. But once I got to Portland, it's kind of like I was forced to purge all the rest of it out, all of the rest of it, you know, and that was needed to purge out all my, like, because it's not like I wasn't being honest with him. I just think that there is a deeper level of honesty that he wanted me to give him. You know, so it's like I was already being honest with him, you know, with me being angry at him, but he's all like, okay, I'm gonna allow you to go a little bit deeper with that. It wasn't a little bit, it was a lot of bit. I'm gonna allow you to go a lot of bit deeper with that. Because he was just, you know, I would say I do know now, you know, that it was just a reminder that he's not afraid of our emotions. He's not afraid of our words. He's not afraid of it. Now, it doesn't make him uncomfortable. Now, it may make other people and other Christians uncomfortable, you know, because we are at the end of the day humans, and I know everyone responds differently to, like, when it comes to honesty and faith or honesty and religion. I think they are two different things. But because when I think of faith, I think of relationship.
Yeah.
When I think of religion, I just think of rules and not really that much relationship. But yeah, and then also something that you had mentioned. This is the thing that I finally remembered. You know, because faith was always meant to be tested and tried and wrestled with. You know what I mean? And that's not something that, you know, people, you know, at least in the Christian environments that I've experienced, and I've experienced many, that's not something that's like that talked about, or, you know, it's just like, oh, get on your knees or just say a prayer and thank God. You know, he's all like, faith doesn't always look like worship, quote unquote worship. He's like, sometimes faith looks like you cussing me out, you being extremely vulnerable, extremely honest, extremely broken in front of me, extremely dirty, you know, being exactly what makes people uncomfortable. He's all like, bring that all to me. You are mine. Come to the throne room. I've already got you back. Like, I already know. I've seen worse. God's like, I've seen worse, and you're nowhere near that. So, you know, because seriously, you know, and it makes me think as well. Holy Spirit holds me accountable because I'm not a stranger to, like, bashing politicians from both sides. You know, I'm very aware of capitalism and the manipulation and how both parties, as long as they're getting money, they don't really care about us. You know, we give them money. We literally give them money. So, but then I think about, and I just bash them, and I bash Hitler and stuff like that. And I know this is going to make people uncomfortable, you know, however, the cross is even for Hitler. The cross is even for the corrupt politicians. You know, when Jesus got on that cross, you know, he didn't exclude anybody, any human being. He only excluded the fallen angels and the principalities of darkness. And even that, you know,
he wrestled with that as well. But at the end of the day, he chose. He was like, it was either gonna be us and them or just us, and he chose us. And I think about, I'm like, you chose us, and I'm like, those not all of the principalities of darkness known him longer than us.
Mhm.
Long story, but the fallen angels, they known you longer than us. You've had face to face contact with them. You know, they
Mhm.
had relationship with you, and you
Mhm.
chose us. And I'm like, that is so beautiful. But the point of the matter is, I'm getting off topic, is, faith is meant to also be wrestled with. Faith is not always going to look pretty, regardless of whatever, the Protestant westernized Christianity teaches. I'm not bashing it. I'm just saying that that is a reality, that
Mhm.
we're, taught that,
Yeah.
faith means, oh, hands always up and prayers and thank you, God. It, if I were to have a church, I wouldn't even call it the church. I would call it the outcasts. Because I feel like it would be like extremely, extremely honest relationship, with God. For example, like when it comes to worship time, that's gonna look different for people. I'm like, if you need to go scream and cuss them out, do what you gotta do. With the worship music, it's not just it's meant to be a dialogue. It's not just us speaking these great things to him, it's also him speaking these great things to us. Because
Mhm.
though we put him first and we put ourselves second, he puts us first and himself second. He decided to put us first and himself second, on that cross. He put us first, thinking of us. When he came at our worst, he didn't come when he was feeling these ooey gooey feelings about us. He came at our dirtiest, darkest, at our worst, where he had every freaking right to leave us.
I feel like at the end of the day, like even if you think about our human relationships, like no one ever wants like a human relationship with a friend that is polished, where we
Right?
hold like all our like negative emotions in and only are fake with each other.
Yeah.
Um, because like God, like you said, like God knows what's in the heart,
Mm-hmm.
and he doesn't want us to be fake with him or like
Yeah.
polished with him. That's not a relationship. That's where
Right.
religion comes in.
Mm.
Um, and so he wants us to be,
I used to be there, by the way.
yeah.
I
I
just
mean,
want
we
to throw that.
all growing up, like we
Okay.
all thought we had to be perfect to
Gotcha.
him.
I just wanted to throw myself under the bus. For me, it was kind of like not under the bus. I wanted to throw myself under the Hummer limousine for me
Mhm.
because I was having a pride moment there.
Yeah,
I was
yeah,
allowing my biases to come through towards
hmm
certain people that I was thinking about. So I was
yeah,
like, okay, I
yeah,
used to be,
yeah,
the type that, with the friendships, like in
hmm
high school, like me saying no so that I could keep them in my life, and just that polished stuff.
hmm
I didn't know what was best because I was not shown best. So I was just thinking that this was best until I encountered, friendships where it wasn't polished, it was honest. It
hmm
wasn't negative, it wasn't positive, it was honest.
yeah. And that's what God wants
It
with us.
is.
And I've noticed that,
That's
like,
so adorable.
well, one thing that like a friend told me is that you have to be close with God to wrestle with Him, and so uh,
Ooh.
that like I think wrestling has like brought me definitely closer, more honest, more real
Yes.
with Him. And I noticed that like
It
the
even
way that
says
I
that in
talk,
the Bible. It even says that in the Bible. We're
yeah.
meant to wrestle with it. It says. Sorry, go ahead.
A lot of times like I will journal kind of like what I want to say to Him, and usually like if I read back or just even towards the end of it, I notice I will start off upset at God. Like, God, why didn't you do this? Why didn't you do that? And it's almost like when you open up your heart to Him, you leave it vulnerable for God to change it and for God to humble you. And so it comes off very accusatory, but then towards the end of like the journal entry and the involvement of it, like I go back to remembering who He is,
Yeah.
and it goes into like a thankful attitude. So it's almost like if we cover and put a band-aid over like the negative stuff, and we only pretend with God, then we're not allowing him to essentially cleanse it and like humble and renew that side. But when we open that wound up and we're like, God, I feel hurt, or I'm mad, or I'm upset right now, and I know that I don't have the right to be, but that's how I feel right now.
Yeah.
It allows God to kind of turn your limited view to slowly like see his side, or like his more open view, and you're reminded of like God's goodness.
Wow.
So I think that's kind of what happens most of the time when we are honest with him.
Yes, honesty equals healing. It's kind of, and it's also like, bring that stuff out to the light. And it's a process, it's hard. It's just like, trees don't, like trees need a light to prosper. I do feel like that darkness definitely, has its season of being buried. Like the burying, it's dark and stuff like that. But, eventually it's going to come a time where that opportunity for growth is going to come, and that seed of the tree is starting to sprout towards the light. And I think, like, I know for me, in the past, when that seed would start to come out the dark, I'd like stomp it back in the dark when it was time to come out to the light. And that's when us, not bringing things to the light can come to hinder us and harm us. So it's kind of like, we got to bring that stuff out to the light. And some people, the light looks like just confessing it to yourself. Some people, the light looks like, confessing it to God, or confessing it to others, or, journaling it, just some form of acknowledgement is also considered light. And so I just think that that's really beautiful, what you've just been mentioning and talking about. You just had a whole sermon, and we love that. And we love that. And Callie, thank you so much.
Of course.
Okay, I do. I'm gonna ask you something after this, by the way. Okay, there's two things I'm gonna ask you after this, and I just want to know your thoughts. Okay. So everyone listening or watching this, if no one has told you today that you are lovable, please allow me to be the first. Allow yourself to be the second. Folks, you are lovable. You are not deserving because you are worth it. Deserving is earned. Worth is given because you are valuable. It's like that $100 on the ground. It doesn't matter if that thing's been stomped on, dirty. It doesn't look like it deserves $100, but that's $100 regardless. And we will get $100 worth of items because of that $100 bill. Why? Because it is just given value. It doesn't have to deserve it. It is just as valuable on its best days as it is its worst days. It does not change value ever. So folks, that's you. I know society, can kind of make us feel like, oh, we're supposed to, like our actions make us earn and deserve things, and for human, that's how the society works. But just you, folks, as an overall human being, as you are, aside from society, you are worth it, folks. And you were loved. And I'm glad you're still on this earth, folks. And I'm looking away from the camera because a boss is trying not to cry because I got Vaseline on right now because I got some skin stuff going on right now thanks to the Texas heat, and I don't like the feeling of water touching Vaseline. I just don't like that feeling, so I'm trying to look away from the camera so I don't cry. So, sorry, I almost knocked this laptop over. Alrighty, folks. Thank you, Callie, for showing up. And, we love a good all-star. And, folks, I will see you next episode for whatever that episode will be. Alrighty, bye, folks. Josias and Callie out.